Hey everybody, Rachel here from Rachthestamper.com. Today I'm going to show you how to make this really fun card. Now, I was going to do this as a swap because I'm in a group where we make a card once a month to share. But there was a little bit of explaining with how I got the blue. So you can see there's blue here, but I didn't do it everywhere. So it kind of gives like the essence of clouds. So I figured I'll make a video. That way to explain it a little bit better. Before we get started, I just want to share a couple things with you. In case you're interested, the January to June mini catalog is going to be retiring very soon, June 30th, as a matter of fact. There are lots of things that are carrying over in here. However, there are plenty of things that aren't. So if there's something you want to get, you should probably get it sooner than later. I know this stamp set's carrying over. This one isn't. This was one of my favorites. Actually, I think this paper has sold out, but these were really great for making beach cards. So you might want to get your hands on those dies before they're gone. This is another one, sadly, artfully layered. I really liked this stamp set as well. However, luckily the sea glass shapes will be carrying over, so that's pretty good. I did use those on our card today. And Paradise Palms is going to be carrying over. So there's lots of different stuff you can do. This also does have a coordinating die set. But there's lots of great stuff that you can do with this stamp set. So I'm going to show you one today. One other thing to mention, that the June to December mini, aka the holiday catalog, is going to be premiering July 1st for customer order. So there's lots of great stuff in here. You can see a lot of the dies and papers and stuff if you just kind of flip around. Hopefully everyone should have their catalog by now. Can't show you anything inside yet, but also July will be getting celebration. So for every $50 you spend US, you will earn one thing free. So there's $50 and $100 qualifications. I should be getting my order soon, but there's lots of really cute stuff in here, lots of paper. There's a really cute die set, but this has a lot of fun stuff. All I'm going to say is if you gnome what I like, and you might like gnomes, you might gnome what I'm talking about. But instead of doing this in the same pattern, I actually decided that I'm going to do this a little bit differently. So I have a scrap piece from another card, and I'm actually going to show you this soon as well. But this is 3 3/4. I already started stamping. I had the video again, so you can see a little stuff on the back. 3 3/4 by 5. And then this one I just did 1/8 bigger, only because the paper, I was just trying to conserve paper. So it's only about a 1/16 bigger on each side. Normally I would do 3 3/4 by 5, 4 by 5 1/4, and then the base card will be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 finished. But we're going to just work what we have. I'll show you that in a little bit. And then I have a scrap for my sentiment. The sentiment here actually uses the deckled rectangles, and I know you're like, that's a square. Well, kind of, not really a rectangle, but I actually used the smallest deckled rectangle, and then I cut it twice to create it the size that I want it to be. So you can use these for pretty much any size you want. So to begin, I'm going to show you how to make this. Let me just grab a little scrap. So I'm going to do one thing really quickly. I just want to smooth down my edges since I had to flip this. Rainbow Stamper has a friend over, so he's asking me if I could fix something for him. So to get started, what we're going to do, and I'll show you a couple different ways to do most of these things. These, let me show you really quickly. These are most of the colors we're going to use today. Okay, so we're going to use soft suede, and parakeet party to do our first palm tree trio, which is going to kind of set the tone for the card. So I'm going to ink the leaves. So I'm trying just to get the leaves. Obviously, you're going to get a little bit of the trunk. But you can do this part a couple different ways. So if you have the marker, you could just take the marker and you can run up your trunk like so. Okay, I'm going to leave this out. I'm going to show you something else. You also could take your soft suede ink pad, and it's usually easier if I do it this way. Kind of ink it up like that. Now you don't want to get too far up because you don't want to get brown on your trees. But another thing you could do if you don't have the marker is you could take your blender pen, use the side I already used, dip it in a little bit of the ink, and then finish coloring in your trunks like so. So lots of different ways to get kind of the same effect. So then, let me just move this over for a second. I'm going to take my garden green marker. That's the only other one I forgot to tell you. And you're just going to kind of randomly tap a little bit. And then I'm going to do a Darth Vader and exhale onto this. just to make sure that it's wet, and stamp. Okay, so you can see I did get a teeny bit of brown on the bottom of this, which is okay. It just looks like these palm trees need more water. But I got a very similar effect, so it's very easy to replicate. I did this one first. This was for my first attempt at filming, and this is the second. Trunks are probably a little bit darker, but really that's about it. Then we're going to take soft suede, and we're going to stamp our other two palm trunks. Now, there are more than one trunk in here. There's a curved and a straight. I was just being lazy, so I decided I was going to do the curve, and then that one's kind of more of a straight. Okay, so I'm going to set this over here. And I am still going to need this for the coconuts, but I'm going to do the palm leaves first. Okay, so we have two different ones. Now, one other thing I want to tell you, because I have seen people do this before, which is a really, really cool trick. So I'm going to ink this in Parakeet Party. I'm going to do the same thing, adding just a little bit of touches of garden green kind of here and there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp it. I'm going to pick it up just a little bit and turn it. And it kind of gives the effect as if this were blowing in the breeze. It's almost like an intentional halo. So one more time, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to stamp this off so I don't get any, there's not very much dark green on there. So same thing again. I'm going to add a little bit more dark green this time. So once again, some garden green. And kind of put this one here. So it almost looks as if they're swaying in the breeze, which I think is a really cool idea. So I'm pretty sure that's all we need for now. We might use a little bit of this when we blend, but I'm going to set this on the side for now. And you could have used two different sizes. I just went with the bigger one, so kind of whatever floats your boat. I'm going to grab the coconuts while we have this. We'll stamp these. I'm only going to put these in the larger trees. And you can certainly kind of rotate these around if you wanted more than one. That looks good. This one up here. Now I'm going to, before I go any farther, I'm going to add a little bit of beech. And I did that with pale papaya because it's kind of yellow, I guess slightly tannish. And you could do it stamped off first to make it lighter. So that's usually what I do. So I'm going to stamp off, add that in. And part of this is going to be covered up, so it's not like a truly big deal. If you don't have this to add it, it's fine. So that was it. And then we're going to do our sun. So I'm pretty sure, I just want to make sure I stamp this, that this is the color that I picked. This mango, if you have it, is unfortunately one of those colors. Yeah, that looks good. That kind of gets the weird layer of schmutz on it, but it still inks fine. And actually, sometimes it kind of gives you that nice multicolor sun. So what I'm going to do is I have a blender brush that I've used for like yellows and oranges. So I'm going to stamp this, and then I'm going to kind of fan around, and it kind of gives you that nice halo effect of the sun, like a really hot sun on a summer afternoon. That's all I really want. I don't want anything really ridiculous, and I'm trying to kind of stay away from the trees just so I don't get any of that green ink in there. So that's it for that. And the only other thing I really have is the blue, which we're going to wait a little bit for that. I'm going to do Evening Evergreen, and I'm going to just add in. So it's kind of the same thing. I do need a green blending brush as well. But I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to stamp some beach grass down here at the bottom. So I'm just kind of stamping this in. I'm doing it more than one time. Okay, and then I'm going to take my blending brush, and I'm just going to kind of spread this ink around. So it gives you a little bit of like kind of that maybe slightly green grass. I know you can see the palms behind there, but you kind of want it so it's more like beach grass. So there's some beach, but there's also some, you know, when you go to the beach, there's that like a thistly, almost, not thistly, a thatchy look of grass. It's not really grass. It's probably, I mean, it's called Bermuda grass, but anyway, maybe it's not, so don't quote me on that. But that is all we're pretty much doing for that. Now, the last part we have to do is the Tahitian Tide, and this is going to be for the blue. I'm going to give this a second just to dry, and in the meantime, I'm going to get out my soft suede once more, and I'm going to just stamp the sentiment onto this little scrap here. And I'm going to do it this way. That way I can cut my rectangle. So I just have retirement wishes. Now, granted, I'm trying to think. There's probably plenty other things you could do. Let's do happy birthday. Just as a matter of fact, just to change it up. Since I already have one that has retirement wishes, we'll do happy birthday. Put that on the side. And then I'll show you how to do this as a partial die cut, and we'll emboss that thing while we're waiting for this to dry a little bit. So happy birthday. Looks good. I think I could have gotten a little bit more inky. Let's try that one more time. That's better. All right. I'm going to put this on the side because I think that dude needs to be re-inked. All right. So now what we're going to do, let me move this out of the way, and I'm going to let this fella sit here. Move a couple of these over. Pretty much I think I used all of them. I'm going to bring this up and set this out of the way. So what we're going to do to start is we're going to die cut our happy birthday. So I have a little piece of Post-it tape. So I'm kind of just deciding where do I want it. And then we're also going to do this at the same time. So this is the Fern 3D. And basically I just wanted it to have some sort of a background to it. It didn't really need to be anything specific. So I'm going to put this into my folder. I'm going to do this first, embossing it. If you happen to still have a Big Shot, oh, here's what I used before. I think this is birch, pine. I don't even know, honestly. I really need to write the name on them. There's so many that I can't remember. But when you're doing the 3D folders that just have Stampin' Up, not Sizzix, if you still happen to have your blue plate and a Big Shot, this is what you're going to use. So just your Big Shot and your regular platform, blue plate. This is for the 3D embossing folders that only say Stampin' Up. They don't say Sizzix because those use a different sandwich. Okay. So this turns out pretty deeply etched, as you can see. So it's very cool. Now, one thing I might do is actually a little bit of blender brush onto that. Just add a little bit of color. So I'm going to show you this really quickly. This is just with whatever green you have. You can kind of add it to the ends because that's really all you're going to see is the corners. There's typically, and because this is pretty tightly cut, you might not see very much, but it will kind of give you a little bit of something. So I'm going to grab, this is the same color, Parakeet Party and Parakeet Party cardstock. So just give a little bit to the edge. Doesn't need to be much because like I said, you may, if you cut your layer bigger, you'll definitely see it, but my layer is pretty tight, so I don't know how much you're going to see. So that's our layer. Then we're going to bring in the magnetic platform, and I'll show you how to do this because we're going to have to run this through twice. So basically, the first time you're going to line it up to where you want the end to be, okay? So I'm lining up pretty close to my words. I'm going to layer this on. So again, I have my old Big Shot magnetic platform, 2 cutting plates. So if you want to make something smaller, now certainly if you wanted to, you could just trim this off and call it a day. But I want it to have the same deckled edge the whole way. So what I'm going to do is I'm just kind of lining this up where I want it to cut again. Just going to grab that same piece of Post-it tape, layer this on, and I do try to move it to one side just because there's not really any need to cut the other one. So you really only need to cut this layer here. So when you're doing partial die cutting, the one thing you want to remember is you don't want to put it over the whole thing again, especially depending on what type you're doing. Now this isn't going to matter because it's only going to cut this part here, but it could put a second layer on it if you're using, say, an oval or something. If that is the case, you want to make sure that you only line this up to the edge so it just cuts on the layer that you want, okay? So I'm going to put it in like this, and you can feed either side in. Just make sure you run it till it gets to that cut plate. I'll bring this over so you can see what I mean. So it just cut off that one little piece. So see, I did get a little extra recut there just because of where it hit on the bottom. So that's fine. It's just that when you're doing this, if you don't pay attention, you can kind of goof it up sometimes. So there's our little piece. I'll save that piece of Post-it tape because you can pretty much use that over for a good long time. And then the other thing, if you remember, I did actually do the edge of this with blue. I don't know how much blue is on here now. It might be just a teeny bit, just to give it something, but I don't want to give too much. And also you have to remember that if you're stamping a dark ink and you add something light and this isn't dry, it's going to smudge. So you don't really want that, okay? So that is our sentiment. So really the last part we have to do now is to add in the Tahitian tide. So when I did this, the best way to explain it is I kind of popped. So I was like popping all around because I didn't really want to smudge the other colors that I created, because when you're introducing a wet ink, there is the possibility that you could add wet ink to dry ink and the colors could still mix. Okay, so I tried my best to kind of stay in the areas where there was just white. So I did tap off a little bit first. So I kind of tap, I guess you could call it like hopping almost, but I still wanted to have areas that had white. So you'll see this is pretty evident when you go here, because I wanted there to be almost like a cloud-like effect, if that makes sense. Kind of like pouncing, hopping. I don't even know what you would really call this. But I was trying to, again, just leave some areas. You don't want to coat the whole thing. Whereas normally if you were going to do a sky, for example, you would just blend the whole thing. It would be like solid. It would have shades and hues of the same color, but I wanted there to be gaps. So this almost looks like there's a little bit of a cloud right there, and that's really what I wanted to go for. Very difficult to title whatever this is. Swiping, hopping, pouncing, swooshing, confused card making. Maybe that's the best way to put it, but that's good because I don't want to overdo it. And I'm hoping you can see, but there are definitely a lot of white spots in here where it looks like it could be clouds. Again, this isn't necessarily meant to be water. This could be that you were up on the edge of something and this is looking over and you're looking into the sky. So it's not really meant to be a water scene per se for this specific card. Okay. So now all we're going to do is layer these together. And as I said, if you would have had a larger border with this, but I was just being a little conservative with my paper, you certainly would have seen some more of it. Okay. I also use, and I'm going to show you this. This is a combo, the Old Olive and Sahara Sand combo. These may be retiring. The ribbon is so hard sometimes to decide if it is or isn't going that it really would be hard to say. But I'm going to just do the same thing that I did with this one. And when I do tend to attach my ribbon, I almost always use, if I can find it, yep, my Stampin' Seal Plus. The reason being is it really hooks the ribbon on well. You don't need a lot. And then you can kind of adjust wherever it is. So I'm going to show you what I mean on the other side. So if I wanted it to be like this, could be a little bit high to me. So still have that big thread of it. I can bring this down lower. I'm going to go ahead and trim this because that's definitely large enough. And then we'll decide where this is going to go. This is just a smidge too high. You don't want to pull too tight because you don't want to bend your cardstock that then it doesn't lay flat. I think that looks pretty good. Now, one other thing that I did just to kind of keep it in place, and this is really just personal preference if you do or don't want to do this, is I used a mini glue dot, and I knew that for this one I put my sentiment over here, so I'm actually just going to put the glue dot underneath of this, and I really just did this to hold the ribbon in place. So it wouldn't be jumping all over the place. So if you wanted to use more than one, you could, but I kind of figured if I had one in that area, it would really just anchor it. And then the rest of it, once we glue it down, should be really nice. So we're going to put that right there. And I'm going to grab some liquid glue to adhere this. Now you definitely are going to need an inside panel for this, unless you decide to choose a different background. But since I have black, you obviously are going to need, or else you're not going to be able to see it. Since I do have some holes in my cardstock here, I'm going to put this onto my silicone mat, just prevent it from sticking to anything. And again, since this is a really tight layer, the liquid glue is super helpful in making sure that you have edges on all sides that are uniform. Okay, there you go. Now I'm going to pop this on before I mount this to my base card. And what I've been doing is sometimes I use the mini dimensionals, and then I won't use them at all for a while. So then all I will have is mini. So what I've been doing is just using them in groups of 2, and then it seems that it gives enough of a lift instead of having like a saggy spot. So I'm going to pop them on. And again, I didn't get really crazy. Before I go through with this, I'm just going to, because I had this inked from the other thing, I'm going to see if there's just a little bit more ink. That looks good. I don't want to overdo it. And I'm going to pick this up. Really handy part of having the silicone mat, because again, I had this whole gluey space and nothing stuck. So that's pretty handy as well. So let me just clear these little dimensional backings off. Now we're going to mount this to our card base. Okay, so same thing again. You could use dimensionals if you want, but since I did them on the one spot, I kind of figure I don't really want it to be too heavy to mail. And then this is going to kind of layer in there so it has a really nice, almost like a postcard feel. And if you wanted to, the size of this, you could actually even turn it so it kind of look like a photograph. I've done that before with a lot of these kind of designs when I create them. I think it's a really fun way to do cards because, oops, I got some blue on there. A fun way to do cards because it kind of looks like a snapshot of where you were. So that's always fun for me. And I feel like I did not score this correctly. Let me make sure. Oh, heavens. Of all times, this is when I decided I didn't score it correctly. Let me just go over. Usually you can still save it. There we go. Okay. So that's pretty well on there. Now, the only thing we still need, and I'm going to put this on here because I find sometimes that if I don't, I never go through with it. So what we'll do is we'll put a little something on the inside. I'm going to kind of stick with the same thing. I'm going to do a teeny bit of the pale papaya as a beach. I don't want to do anything too much. So we'll keep this to the side. That way, in case you want to write, you can write on the other side. And we'll use that smaller palm tree, and we'll just use this. That'll be good enough. That way it's not too much. Put one little lone palm. Now, one other thing I should tell you, I'm going to show you this while I'm at it. And I'm going to have to clean this really quickly before I do it. So say if we put this here right now, right? This is going to be so high, the palm tree is going to be sticking out. But if you put it down here, it looks like it didn't grow out of the sand there, right? So here is your alternative for this. It's a good teaching moment. Sometimes they come at the end of the video. I'm going to just clean this off. So what you can do is you can do this 2 ways. You can ink, so we have the top. So we'll say we're going to ink this about a little bit more than halfway. Right, so we have a little bit more than halfway, kind of stops there. Now, that's all fine and dandy, but then you're going to have this really hard stop where that lands. So another thing you can do, let me just grab, actually I have a little piece of a Post-it right here, is you can take a piece of a Post-it, this is a sticky part, and you kind of rip it. I know I've showed you this on a video before. So I have partially torn edge. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sit this here. That way it's kind of in this sand part. I'm going to huff on it. And where's my ink? Right about here. And then when I put it down, it kind of looks like it went right in there. Okay, so that's another good tip. And I do have the bottom, because I must not have dried that very well, the bottom of my inking there. So that's another really good idea, depending on what it is you're looking for your palm tree, or how tall you want it to be, I guess is a good way to put it. So since I did this on the front, I'll do the same thing here. I'm just going to add a little bit of garden green in a couple places, and I'll do the same thing. There you go. And obviously I didn't stamp this really well to match, so I'm going to have to add the coconuts in just to cover up my little gap in space there. Put those up here. There you go. Now you can't even tell. So it looks really, really cute. And then you can add whatever other sentiment. So we had happy birthday. You could add hope you find paradise, or wishing you a warm and beachy kind of day. So I'm going to leave this blank because you never know what it is that I'm actually going to get into with that. So finally, we're going to add this to the inside, and then we're going to add some of our, let me just make sure this is cut correctly. Yep. Let me just put some glue on here. I have a bag of Whisper white panels that I pre-cut, but I keep them varied in sizes because I never know what I'm going to need to fill in a card. So they are ranging from quarter sheets, which would be 5.5 by 4.25, to 3 3/4 by 5. But I think this is a teeny bit crooked, but it's going to have to be, it is what it is right now. So this is it. The only thing I want to do is I'm going to grab a few of those gems, and I believe I had a pack right here somewhere. Let's see. Could very well be that they're on the floor. What I try to do is I have my all my embellishments kind of separated into two big stamp cases, but apparently I have so many of them, which now I can't even find which ones it is I'm looking for. I have so many that are out of use, and then there's ones that I have and they will just kind of get lost in the shuffle. And now I don't know what I have done with my little gems. Just had them here a minute ago. Well, anyway, I'll see if I can take a peek while I'm cleaning this up. So the only other thing that I don't have on this one that I have here are all those little sea glass gems. They could be under my catalog. Let me just take one last peek before I call it time of death and I don't see them, so we're probably gonna have to move on. But anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. It was very fun to make this card. This is one of those kind of cards where I really just made it on a whim. I actually had a plan that I was making it, like I said, for this group, and then once I started with the pouncing, I was kind of like, how do you explain pouncing to someone on paper without explaining it? So here, I found them. So I kind of figured I would have to save this to do an actual video on it. Would make much more sense. So here are my sea glass elements. I'm just going to add a couple of these. I did add mostly the tiny ones on here because I felt like big ones would kind of take over the card. Now you could do whatever it is you like for that. So we'll just add a couple different sizes here. I did try to make sure I stuck with all three colors. That way there wasn't just one color on the whole thing, and you can kind of add as many as you like. And I even added a few of them up here, and I'll add one, whoops, one more over there and one more down here, just for the heck of it. But which one do you prefer? I kind of do like the bright colors of this one. Again, this one, Tahitian Tide, was definitely a stretch for me because I do like bright colors, but I don't usually like them all at the same time. But I kind of also think that the black framed version really focuses more on the brightness of the green and that mango. So that's also kind of a nice color complementary background as well. So let me know which is your favorite. Do you think this is a easy card to create? Did you learn something new today? All of those things help me in making cards for you. So if you have any questions, anything you'd like to see done or made, please feel free to let me know. I love making video requests, especially if someone has something that they're trying to learn, because it also helps me figure out how to teach it. I thank you guys so very much for joining me today. If you haven't gotten your holiday catalog and you are a customer of mine who's ordered in the past 6 months, it should be coming shortly. So keep an eye on the mail for that. It does come shrink wrapped. Both of the catalogs now come together, so you should be able to find them at the same time. If you have any questions, you can shoot me an email at rachthestamper@gmail.com. And if you'd like to order, you can go to my online store 24/7, rachthestamper.stampinup.net. Thank you guys so very much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day.